In this last part of Chapter 16 about the Olympic Games, I want to talk about the business side of the Olympics. So when we look at revenues, there's two broad ways that any organization can finance their facilities and events. One of them is privately and the other one is publicly. Private funds are typically those that come from outside organizations. Those can be publicly held or publicly visible companies, so foundations and things like that, but could also come from corporations, so funds from outside the organization or persons through merchandise sales, sponsorship, donations, that kind of thing. The IOC uses only private financing to promote and organize the Olympic movement, and again comes from those 5 major revenue sources. However, some mega sporting events, major sporting events that is, and down to local, use public funds. And so the use of public taxes or public funds as tax money to build facilities. Arguably, public funds are used during the Olympic Games, but are used by the host nation in order to fund hosting the games. They are typically used at the national level to fund the construction of sport facilities. So as we talked about before, the revenue sources for the IOC, the main 4, broadcasting revenue from the Olympiad between 2009 and 2012 had $3.91 billion in broadcasting revenue, and the majority of that coming from NBC Universal. The top program, which is the Olympic Partnership Program, is our sponsorship revenue program. In between 2005 and 2008, they had sponsorships in excess of $2.4 billion. In 2010, just as an example of the Winter Games, the ticketing for the Vancouver Winter Olympics was $250 million. And then licensing for Beijing was $163 million. So those are our major revenue sources. But where do those revenue sources go? The IOC doesn't keep very much of it. They're basically overhead costs in order to run their organization is only about 10%. About 90% of the rest of it goes back to the Olympic family. And basically, as we've talked about who those people are, their job is to advance the Olympic movement. So most of the 90% goes to those that support the development of athletes and sports throughout the globe, and those would be your National Olympic Committees or international sport federations. And specifically what the IOC has done is taken the top program, that 2.3, I believe it was, billion dollars in revenue, and taken 50% of that and paid it back directly to the NOCs in order to promote sports within their respective countries, as well as the Olympic movement and the core values. And so all that's to be said, over the last couple of videos, I just want to sum up. The Olympic Games are one of the most observed events in the world. Historically, have been surrounded by religious and political issues. However, sport has been and always will be a business. And we've seen where those revenues and expenses come from. Massive commercialized businesses, while at the same time they streamline the efforts to advance the core values of excellence, friendship, and respect.